Okay, so the reticular region makes up about 4/5 of the dermis, okay? It consists of dense, irregular connective tissue. Okay, so the papillary region was areolar, reticular is dense, irregular connective tissue. It has thick collagen fibers as well, okay, which helps to keep water out, okay, so they don't absorb water into our skin. And it also has elastic fibers as well, which help with the elasticity of our skin. Okay. And then also within this region, we'll have hair follicles, nerves, sebaceous glands, which secrete sweat. Okay. All right. So that's the cutaneous layer of skin. So some other aspects of our skin that we have cleavage lines. Okay, so these are found in the reticular layer as well, and they're caused by collagen fibers, okay, that run parallel to the skin surface. So these are important to surgeons, these cleavage lines. So I'll write that down for you. Okay, so they're important to surgeons because if you do an incision along the cleavage line, it heals a lot quicker than if you were to go against the cleavage line. Okay, so you can look in the PowerPoint and see those cleavage lines and which way they run in the body. Okay, so they run in different ways depending on where in the body you are. We also have something else called flexure lines. Flexure, like flexing, right? Flexure lines. You can't see cleavage lines on the outside of our body. Okay, so to just know which way they run, you can look at the picture and then you'll know which way they run as well. But flexure lines you can see, okay? So they are dermal folds found at joints. So you can see like on your hand, if you look at the front of your hand, like your palm and your fingers where you can flex your fingers, and flexing is just closing the angle. So where you can flex your fingers, you'll see those flexure lines, okay? And on your palm too, where you can flex your palm, right? You can see those flexure lines. And anywhere where you kind of flex, you see those lines, like on your wrist as well, okay? So the dermis is tightly secured to deeper structures. So the skin can't easily slide due to that joint movement, and that causes those deep creases. Okay, so it's visible again, mostly on the hands, wrists, fingers, soles of the feet, and the toes. Okay. Now I'm going to go into detail about the 3 types of skin pigment. So we talked a bit about melanin. Let me just erase this, we're moving on. So we talked a little bit about melanin. So it's the only pigment that's made in skin. We'll talk about it in a little bit more detail. So it's the only pigment made in skin, and again, it's made by those melanocytes. So the more sun that we're exposed to, like I mentioned earlier, the more protection we need from UV damage from the sun. So then the body would produce more melanin, okay? So differences in everyone's skin color is due to how much melanin is produced by melanocytes in the skin, okay? Some people like me, right, have freckles, okay? Those are also caused by production of melanin. Pigmented moles as well are local accumulations of melanin on that mole site. And same thing with freckles. It's just an accumulation of melanin where you get more sun. 2 other skin pigments we have. So here, I'll write skin pigments. Okay, so that was melanin, the only one made in the skin. Ooh, melanin. We also have keratin and hemoglobin. Okay. So keratin, like carrot, is like a yellow-orange pigment, okay? So this is most obvious on the palms of the hand and the soles of the feet. So keratin accumulates in the stratum corneum, so that most superficial layer of skin, and also in the hypodermis, so that fat layer underneath the skin. Okay, so that's why when you see most fat tissue in the body is more of a white color, but the fat tissue underneath the skin is always shown as a yellow color because of the accumulation of keratin. Okay, so keratin can be converted to vitamin A, okay, which is helpful for vision. So that's why they say when you eat a lot of carrots, it's good for your vision. Not, you'd have to eat a lot, but so it can be converted to vitamin A for vision and also helps with health of the epidermis. And it comes externally from food. Okay, so humans cannot make keratin, so you do need to get it from your diet. Okay, and then hemoglobin. So the pinkish hue you probably see in my cheeks of someone with lighter skin is due to lower levels of melanin, and then you can see that pinkish color from the hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is a protein that's found on red blood cells, and it carries oxygen throughout the body. Okay. So because the skin of a Caucasian is really light, the hemoglobin color shines through, so that's what gives that pinkish hue. Okay, so those are the three pigments you can find in the skin. And again, melanin is the only one made in the skin. Okay, keratin you have to get from your diet, and hemoglobin is not made in the skin itself. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about a homeostatic imbalance. So if you spend too much time out in the sun or in a tanning bed, which also gives UV damage, it causes the elastic fibers to clump up within the skin. And this causes the skin to become leathery. So maybe you've seen an older person who spent a lot of time out in the sun, probably didn't use a lot of sunscreen, and you usually see it like on the chest area where there's a lot of sun exposure when you're at the beach. You get like that leathery type of skin, okay? And it's from that clumping of those elastic fibers, okay? So this can depress the immune system, okay? So it causes actually like an overdrive of the immune system, and then for it to become depressed, okay? And it can also cause DNA damage that leads to skin cancer. Okay, so very dangerous to not have protection and spend too much time out in the sun. Although we need the sun for vitamin D, right? So it's a balance. UV light also destroys folic acid. Okay, folic acid is necessary for DNA synthesis, so this is why in prenatal vitamins you'll typically find folic acid because you want the baby to fully develop, right? So that takes a lot of DNA synthesis to create all of those cells of life. Okay. So another thing we'll talk about is photosensitivity increase. So some drugs, typically people who are on treatment for cancer, a lot of those drugs cause photosensitivity, antibiotics as well, to a lesser degree. And this can lead to skin rashes if you are out in the sun when taking those medications. Okay, so the sun causes some sort of chemical change to the drug, causing that rash to occur in photosensitivity. Okay, another clinical connection would be albinism. So albinism is a congenital disorder. Okay, so you get it inherited. And it's due to complete or partial absence of pigment in the skin, hair, and eyes. And it's due to a defect in the enzyme that produces melanin. Okay, so your body cannot produce melanin properly. Vitiligo, this is another disorder, so it's a chronic disorder that causes depigmentation of skin in different patches. Okay, the cause isn't known for vitiligo, but it is likely a combination of different genetic factors paired with some sort of autoimmune disease, but still not too much is known about vitiligo. So you'd have patches of lighter skin on different areas of the body. Whereas with albinism, you have a complete lack of melanin. Okay, another homeostatic imbalance, based on the color of the skin, you can tell a little bit about what's going on with a person's health. Okay, so cyanosis, this is a blue skin color. Cyan is like a shade of blue. Okay, so when you see someone lips turning blue or skin turning blue in general, this could mean low oxygenation. Okay, so hemoglobin is not properly oxygenated. Pallor, this is like a pale color, right? You go pale. So this can be due to anemia, or low blood pressure, or just fear, or sometimes anger, although usually maybe you would have more of a red color with anger as well, right? Blood flowing. Erythema, this is a redness of the skin. So this can be due to fever. Okay, it can be due to hypertension, which would be lots of blood, right? Inflammation, or some sort of allergy, right? Some sort of reaction to something. And then jaundice, this is a yellowing color of the whites of the eyes and the skin, or the skin. This can indicate a liver disorder. So it's caused, that yellow color is caused by bilirubin in the blood, which is a yellow pigment found in bile. Bile is produced by the liver and helps break down fats that we eat. Okay, so it leads to that bilirubin leads to that yellow color in the skin. Okay. All right, now let's get into hair and nails. So hair, again, this is present all over the body except for where our thick skin is, so the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. And hair is made up of dead keratinized epidermal cells. Okay, so based on genetics and hormones, it determines the thickness and distribution of our hair. Some people have thick hair or thinner hair, curly hair, or straight hair, right? All different types of textures and thicknesses. Okay. All right, so hair, we have the follicle is, let's draw our bad drawing of skin here. Okay. Okay, so this is my hair. The part that comes out of the skin, okay, is known as the shaft. And then the follicle is the portion that's embedded within the skin. Okay. And then the root is in the dermis area. Okay. So within the skin, there's this muscle connected to the hair follicle known as the erector pili muscle. So it's a small band of smooth muscle, and it's attached to the follicle, and it helps to put the hair or stand the hair up. Okay, so it's responsible for when you get goosebumps, right? When the hair stands up on the skin. And what that actually does is it traps a layer of air to create more of an insulation. So when you're cold, you get goosebumps. So the raising of the hair creates this air layer for more insulation to help try to keep you warm. Okay. So I'm going to go into the hair in another video, the different parts of the hair where I'll go through it on the PowerPoint so you can actually see it and I don't have to do a bad drawing. So I'll get back to hair in the other video, okay? But, so what is the point of hair? Hair warns of insects on the skin, so they can, it can detect if there is something there. It also prevents against physical trauma, mostly on our head where we have lots of hair, okay? So if there were to be some sort of physical trauma, the hair would somewhat protect our head. It also protects from loss of heat, so it helps to keep us warm, okay? And it shields the skin from sunlight. Okay, so the hair on our head, we don't have to put sunscreen where we have hair, right? Or where we have a lot of hair at least, okay? So hair pigments are made by melanocytes as well, okay? So melanocytes within the follicle, the hair follicle, okay? So there's a combination of different melanins in the hair that are yellow, rust-colored, brown, or black, and those create all of the different hair colors. Okay. Red hair has an additional pigment known as pheomelanin. Okay, and gray and white hair happens when melanin production decreases and air bubbles replace melanin in the shaft. So no more melanin, then you wouldn't have coloring of your hair anymore. Okay, so it happens as we age. Okay, there's 3 different types of hair. Terminal hair, this is coarse, long hair. So this is found on the scalp, on the eyebrows, and at puberty it occurs on the pubic area and the axillary area. Okay, and for males, on the face and neck as well. Vellus hair, this is a fine pale body hair found throughout the body. Okay, so it's found on children and adult females. And then the other type of hair we have is lanugo. So this is specifically a type of hair found on the fetus to help protect the fetus. It keeps the fetus warm when in the stomach or when in the abdomen. Okay, but it can also develop if someone has an eating disorder because they lose so much body fat that lanugo grows to help to keep them warm and protect them as well. Okay. So nutrition and hormones will affect growth of hair, right? So if you are very malnourished, then your hair could potentially fall out, okay? And we lose hair daily, about 90 hairs per day. I'll get into the glands and nail as well in the other video. Okay, so let's get into the functions of skin. So our skin has so many different functions. So let's go through them one by one. So a really important one is, I'll do functions of skin. Okay, one really important one is thermoregulation. What does that mean? Thermo is like heat, right? Regulation is to kind of maintain something. Okay. So this is to help maintain our body temperature, okay? So skin does that in a number of ways, okay? First, it's just like a protective layer which helps to insulate our body. Like I talked about with the erector pili muscle, hair can stand up, creating a layer of air that helps to insulate the body. We also have sweat glands in the skin that produce sweat all the time. So there's undetectable sweat that we don't even notice that the body is releasing all the time, and then there's detectable sweat that we, when we get very hot or we're exercising, our body produces. Okay, so that helps to keep us cool if we're warm. Okay, and we have blood vessels within the skin. Okay, so if we're out in the cold, dermal blood vessels will constrict or kind of close more, not fully, but they'll close a bit. That causes the skin temperature to drop to slow the passive loss of heat. So it helps to keep heat within the body. Okay, another function of skin is it acts as a blood reservoir. Okay. So the dermis has so many blood vessels that it holds about 8 to 10% of the blood flow of a person at rest. Okay, which can be important if we get into some sort of emergency situation, we need to quickly use that blood. So it holds a lot of our blood. Okay. Protection, right? That's a major one as well. Protection. So it's a physical barrier to anything on the outside. It's also a chemical barrier and a biological barrier, okay? So a chemical barrier, the skin secretes lots of chemicals. So sweat, which has some antimicrobial properties. It produces sebum and defensins, also those kill bacteria. And an antimicrobial defensin has antimicrobial properties, okay? It's also known as an acid mantle, so it has a low pH, which helps to protect from bacteria not being able to multiply on the skin, okay? And then melanin creates a chemical barrier against UV damage. Okay, it's a physical barrier. Okay, so those keratin cells on the outside of skin and the stratum corneum help to block water or any water-soluble substances from entering the skin. Okay. Although some chemicals can penetrate the skin, like different drugs, right? And then biological barriers as well is all part of protection. Okay, so the epidermis contains phagocytic cells. Phagocytes eat up foreign things like bacteria. Okay, the dermis, like we talked about, contains macrophages which patrol the dermis, and they'll call in other immune cells to help out if they find something. Okay. And then DNA can absorb some UV radiation and convert it to heat, although UV also does damage DNA if it's too much. Okay. So, cutaneous sensations. So the skin contains different types of sensory receptors, and they're found in different layers of the skin. Okay, so we have tactile sensations, which are for touch, vibration, pressure. Okay, so these are found in the stratum basal, right? Those touch cells or tactile cells. Thermal sensations, these are how our skin can feel cold from hot. Okay, so if you put your hand into cold water, you would feel that, right, immediately. Or if you walk outside into the cold, you would feel that immediately. And then we have pain receptors as well, which is really just the nerves, right? We feel pain. Okay, so sensation, we'll say sensation is a function of skin. Okay, another function would be excretion and absorption. Okay. So excretion is elimination of substances from the body, and absorption is taking things into the cells from the outside of the body. Okay, so this would be like transdermal drug administration. Vitamin D synthesis. Okay, so vitamin D synthesis. Okay, so UV rays. So being out in the sun, right, I said is important for vitamin D to be made. So they activate a precursor molecule, calcitriol, which turns into vitamin D. Okay, and then vitamin D is needed to absorb calcium from food. So we can eat all the calcium we want. If we don't have enough vitamin D, we're not going to absorb that. Okay, all right, so these are all the functions of skin. Okay, so do make sure that you know those and a bit of the details about how those functions work. Okay, now let's talk about epidermal wound healing. So if there's a superficial wound, it only affects the epidermis. This is when this would occur. Okay, so we have our cells. I'll draw some squamous cells, and we'll draw a little cut there, so a little opening. And then we'll draw some other cells here. Okay, something like this. So we have some sort of cut. Really what happens is this here, let's say this is the stratum basal. Mitosis would occur, more cells would be made, right, via mitosis, and those cells would move inward, covering this opening, okay, or this cut. And those cells move up, and then we would go back to our normal epidermis with all of its cells, okay? So the epidermis would thicken. If we get a deeper wound that goes into the dermis, okay, a scab would form, okay? So we have an inflammatory phase. I won't draw it out, but you have an inflammatory phase where the site would inflame, blood clotting would occur. So we're not going to get into blood clotting until you get into AMP2, but the blood vessel would be open. There's lots of different proteins within the blood that would come and cause a the blood to clot and a scab would form on the outside of the skin. And then eventually that would flake off as the cells remake themselves, okay, through mitosis as well. Okay, and then in the deeper dermis layer, you would get scar tissue formation, which again is known as fibrosis. Okay, so as we age, our skin, of course, is going to change. We get things like wrinkles from breakdown of those fibers, dehydration and cracking in the skin. Production of sweat decreases, so you can't thermoregulate as well. Okay, those melanocyte numbers decrease, so you'd get gray hair. Nails become more brittle, and subcutaneous fat is lost, and the skin becomes thinner. Okay, so let's talk about 3 major types of skin cancer. Okay, so first we have basal cell carcinoma. Write that down. Basal cell carcinoma. This is the most common and also the least harmful. Okay, so it's the least malignant, it's least likely to move throughout the body and cause different other types of cancers. Okay, so the stratum basal cells, right, this affects the basal cells. They proliferate or copy, okay, and slowly invade the dermis and hypodermis. Okay, this can be cured by surgical excision, so cutting out the carcinoma. Okay, in most cases, like 99% of cases, it can be solved just by cutting out the carcinoma. Then we have squamous cell carcinoma. Okay, so the second most type, and this one can metastasize, so it can spread. So it involves keratinocytes of the stratum spinosum layer. Okay, so that layer, the layer is found above the basal layer. Okay, so it's usually a scaly, like reddened papule on the body. Okay, so it happens a lot on the scalp, lips, and hands. So of course those places get lots of sun and sometimes aren't protected, right? I typically don't think of to protect my scalp or my lips, right? So that's a place that skin cancer can occur a lot. Okay. So this is also has a good prognosis, meaning it's likely to be cured if taken care of. Okay. So usually you would need radiation therapy or a surgical removal or a combination of both. Okay. And then the most deadly type of cancer, melanoma. Okay, so this is a cancer of the melanocytes, and it's the most deadly because it's highly likely to metastasize, and it's resistant to chemotherapy, so it's a dangerous type. Okay, so key to survival of melanoma is early detection. So use the ABCD rule for skin cancer. Okay, A, asymmetry. If a mole looks asymmetric, it should be checked out. If a mole is perfectly round and symmetric, it's probably okay. You should always get any new mole checked out, of course. Okay. B, border. Okay, so this is for border irregularity. So if some parts of it come up a bit more and some parts are lower, then it has border irregularity and should be checked out immediately. C is color. If a mole has lots of different colors to it, then it could potentially be a melanoma. So there could be lots of different colors of moles: brown, very, very, very dark brown, tan, red, so it varies. So if there's lots of different colors going on, then it should be checked out. Okay, it can even be like a bluish color. Okay, and then D is diameter. If it's larger than the size of an eraser on a pencil, it should be checked out. Okay, so that's about 6 millimeters. Okay, so that's the ABCD rule of skin cancer and getting things checked out. In the PowerPoint, there's some pictures as well. Okay, and then let's talk about burn. So a burn is tissue damage due to excessive heat. There's 3 types. First degree. This only reaches down to the layer of the epidermis, so it doesn't go deeper than that. So this can even be caused by like touching something hot on the stove, okay, or a sunburn. A sunburn is even a first degree burn. Okay. Then we have second degree. This goes, obviously, the epidermis, but it goes down to the layer of the dermis. Okay, so this one's a bit more dangerous. Okay, or more intense. This could cause blistering. And then a third degree, of course, it affects the epidermis and now the dermis as well. But also it goes down to the layer of the hypodermis or subcutaneous layer. Okay, and this one may have to be treated by like a skin graft or something more intense. Okay. And then finally, with burns, a quick way to tell the degree of a burn, not really how deep it's gone, but maybe how much of the body the burn has affected, is known as the rule of 9s. So the rule of 9s breaks down the body into 9%. So the whole arm, each arm is 9% each. Okay. The head and neck is 9%. The trunk, 9%. Front and then back is another 9%. Top of each leg is 9% and bottom of each leg is 9%. So it breaks down the body into different areas of 9% so that the hospital can quickly tell the percentage of the body that has been burned. Okay, so make sure you watch the other video I'm going to make on going through the PowerPoint so I can show you pictures of different things that you could find within the skin, and then I'll also go through the layers of hair and the parts of a nail.